Today we're honored to have Christy Morton, serves as VEDP's Vice President of External Affairs, responsible for managing VEDP's relationship with the General Assembly, the administration, and Virginia's congressional delegation. She also leads VEDP's external relations with local and regional economic development organizations, trade associations, and other key stakeholders and partners to increase VEDP's collaboration across the Commonwealth. Impressive resume, Christy. I'm reading this so I don't miss anything. Christy previously served 4 years as Executive Director of the Virginia Rural Center, where she brought together local and state government officials to develop solutions for challenges facing rural communities. She has a BA in Political Science from Christopher Newport University, 2 graduate certificates from Virginia Tech, and completed the Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership program at the University of Virginia. Christy, thank you so much and welcome. We'll turn that over to you and Joe. Are you going to have time for questions afterward?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Brenda,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Brenda, so much for the opportunity to join you all today. We were talking a little bit before we got started about how nice it is to see people, even though we can't be together, to be on Zoom and be able to see faces. And I see a lot of friends and folks I've had the opportunity to work with over the years. And so it's great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. Pleased to join you and talk a little bit about economic development and the work we're doing at VEDP right now. Obviously, this is a challenging time for all of us in the Commonwealth and across the country and globe. And so we're, really trying to focus on economic recovery and the work we can do to help get Virginians back to work. So pleased to share a little bit with you all about those efforts, as well as some of the other initiatives that we currently have going on at VEDP that I think will specifically be of interest to you all in local government. So, Joe, if we could go to the first slide, please. Thank you. So obviously, I don't need to tell you all about the challenges that COVID has presented for communities across Virginia, localities, and the Commonwealth as a whole. Recent forecasts show that this is definitely going to be, a multi-year recovery. I think Secretary Lane mentioned last week, could possibly be up even to 6 years in some parts of the state, depending upon how quickly we get a vaccine and folks are able to get back to normal. So what we're trying to focus on of next year, forecasts indicate about 200,000 Virginians will still be out of work. So there's a lot of work that we all need to do to try to get those folks into new jobs as quickly as possible. What we've done in recent months is try to look at the areas, the sectors that are doing well during this time and that we think are going to continue to do well after COVID. And I know we're all looking forward to after COVID and not quite sure when that will happen, but we've seen several areas in particular, and we're doing more work on refining this, but I'll just mention those briefly and then kind of dig in a little bit. Capturing any reshoring or onshoring initiatives that may be coming as a result of some of the supply chain disruptions experienced over the last 6 months or so. Particularly with pharmaceuticals and medical supply equipment, accelerating digital Virginia, cloud computing, software development, data centers, those all have obviously been doing well during this time. Telework, we think there's going to, obviously there's a lot of telework right now. We think there's going to continue to be more of that. And what will that look like after the pandemic? And then certainly retooling and reskilling Virginia's workforce that has been unemployed as a result of the pandemic. And so there are various initiatives that we think can help with this. But if we go to the next slide, Joe, I just want to dig in a little bit on each one of those and let you know what we're thinking. So capturing manufacturing, reshoring, and supply chain opportunities. As I mentioned, obviously, there were a lot of disruptions that we all experienced in the spring with vital equipment, PPE, and that really, I think, highlighted some of the weaknesses in the system, if you will, in terms of, I think companies are going to be looking to their products more closely to their consumers, at least, as I mentioned, some of these vital things like, pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. We don't know how big that opportunity is yet. We don't know how much of that is going to take place, but we already have seen some companies express that interest. We've started by launching an initiative, reaching out to identifying and reaching out to target companies that may kind of be fall in this area to say, hey, if you're looking to come back to the U.S., here's why you should look at Virginia. So that's an area we've applied for an EDA grant and are hoping to do more work around identifying, specific companies that we can approach for this. The next one is Accelerate Virginia. We're all Zooming every day and, using all this data. This is an area, obviously, that has been a high target for Virginia, but we think in this post-COVID environment, when we get to it, that there will continue to be a lot of digital work. And of course, all of the cloud computing, it causes more data to need to be moved and stored with the data center industry, which is already strong in Virginia, but obviously we want to see continue to grow. Next is really seizing telework trends. And that's also one we don't know exactly how big that opportunity is going to be or what exactly it might look like. But as I like to refer to this as our forced experiment in telework. I don't think, all of these companies would just send people home and say, hey, let's see if it works. But we had to, and it has worked in many, many cases. And so we think there are going to be a lot of companies, we've already seen some of the large tech companies say, hey, our folks can work from home. We see two big opportunities there. One is for folks anywhere to come to Virginia and choose to live in Virginia. Obviously, we have so much to offer, our quality of life, our business climate. And so we think that's a big opportunity, as well as, and probably most important for us, having folks in rural and small metro areas of Virginia be able to tap into positions and sectors and jobs that they would not have been able to otherwise. So how do we get, folks in rural areas hired up for some of these positions? And so that's an area we're really focused on as well. And I'll just mention on that, we think that most companies are probably going to do somewhat of a hybrid schedule, a few days in the office, a few days at home. When this is when we're in recovery, that's what we're hearing folks are probably going to focus on most. The last one, there is retooling and reskilling Virginia's workforce. There are going to be a large number of workers that unfortunately their jobs just won't come back, whether that was in hospitality or retail or restaurants. And so how do we transition them to some of these more high growth opportunities? We have two workforce programs at VEDP in our Talent Solutions division, which I think you all are aware of, versus the Talent Accelerator program. And what that does is provide custom training for new jobs in Virginia. So if a company is either looking to expand in Virginia or locate in Virginia, we will handle all of the attraction and training and recruitment for them. So on day one, they can, are ready to open the door and have a workforce ready to go, trained on their equipment. The second one is our VEDP program. It's our oldest incentive. I think everyone's probably aware of that. We provide a grant to offset workforce training costs for companies with creating new jobs. So we think both of those have a big role to play, as well as other great initiatives like Fast Forward Virginia Ready and the new G3 program. So we think Virginia has a suite of programs that can really help get folks back to work. Next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. And so with all of those priority opportunities in mind, these are some of the priority initiatives that we're looking at VEDP. And this is specific only to programs we have at VEDP. As I mentioned, there are a lot of great programs and other authorities and agencies around Virginia that can be extremely helpful. These are just specific to our programs. As I mentioned, the Virginia Talent Accelerator Program and the Virginia Jobs Investment Program. Having these two programs give Virginia a bit of an advantage in that we're the only state that offers a choice to say, we'll either conduct the training for you. We partner with the Virginia Community College system on that. We'll do it for you, or we'll provide, if you want to train yourself, we'll provide a grant to offset that cost. So this is huge for workforce development and getting folks back to work and training them for jobs that are actually being created right now in their communities. So we're really excited about that. Both of those, will need some expansion, of course, to meet those needs. The third is leveraging our trade development programs. We've got some of the best trade development programs in the country, and the goal there is to help Virginia companies get into new markets around the globe. And so when you've got companies in Virginia that have lost business as a result of COVID, it's a great opportunity to help them identify new customers and new markets. And so that's certainly an area of focus for us. And the last is the Virginia Business Ready Sites Program. I think a big site characterization we did last year, 466 sites across the Commonwealth, and identifying their level of readiness and what their tier level is. And so and we think that having Virginia's sites much closer to ready, within 12 months of being able to open a business or a plant or a facility is going to be extremely important. It has been already. As we know, we've lost projects as a lack of readiness, and it certainly will be as we look to the reshoring and onshoring, hopefully wave and making sure that we have sites ready to accommodate that. Can you go ahead to the next slide, please, Joe? So now I just want to turn a little bit to, so that's really COVID and a lot of what we've been doing around that strategy-wise and initiatives. I want to turn just a little bit to some of the local government resources and initiatives that we've put in place to try to work more closely with you all and be good partners. What you see here on the right is our Virginia Economic Review. This issue on aerospace, aviation, and unmanned systems went out about 2 weeks ago. So hopefully you all have that. We did add all county administrators, city managers, boards of supervisors, and city council members across Virginia to our mailing list. So hopefully everyone is getting that, in addition to, of course, our economic developers. This magazine is really aimed at CEOs and site consultants across the country, and it puts the best foot forward of all Virginia has to offer. And each quarterly issue has a theme, and but it features articles from thought leaders around the country, experts in economic development, and really showcases the best Virginia has to offer. We highlight a rural region in every one, and our marketing and communication team does an amazing. Emily, Glenn's daughter. So we appreciate all her work. Yes, shout out for Emily. Next is the quarterly partner report, which is something we provide to our economic development partners. It really gives a detailed view of their region and their community, and the prospects and the site visits and the looks that the community has received from companies. So they have a really detailed understanding of the activity in their locality or region in the last quarter. Next is Impact ED sessions with VEDA. We started doing these in partnership with the Virginia Economic Developers Association. These are, well, there are kind of two versions of them. There was the pre-COVID when we first got started, which was 3-hour-long kind of deep dive sessions where we had the opportunity to really dive into issues like sites or incentives, things like that. But then as COVID took hold, we started doing these on a much more regular basis, several times a month, at one point, I think once a week, where we could bring the economic development community together and talk about challenges and funding opportunities, grants, how is each economic developer, working to address the needs in their specific community. It became a great opportunity to share information. So now we're getting back more to the deep dive sessions. And so we're excited about that. The other thing we've done is we've always had a VEDP orientation 3 or 4 times a year where we provided a detailed overview of each division at VEDP and what programs we offered, incentives, how our research team can help with preparing proposals, things like that. And it's been limited because of the size of the boardroom, frankly. So we've taken that virtual and been able to reach many more economic developers and folks new to economic development in the Commonwealth. In addition to that, we've added an economic development to that for an hour. It's really aimed at those communities that don't have a person dedicated to economic development. Communities, more rural communities in Virginia aren't able to have full-time staff dedicated to economic development. And so you've got, a county administrator wearing multiple hats. And so this is really aimed at trying to provide information to those folks, but certainly we welcome, members of boards of supervisors or others who may want to learn a little bit more about the economic development landscape in Virginia. And then the last one there I'll mention is the local and regional competitiveness initiative. And I just want to dig in on that for a couple of slides and that I'd love to take questions. And this is really about creating a benchmark tool to help economic developers understand best practices and share with their leadership the importance of economic competitiveness and what it takes to be competitive in Virginia and across the country, frankly. We launched this in January, and there's a 30-minute self-assessment covering things like what's their organizational capacity, what are their strategies and initiatives, what are their goals in their community. And then in the summer, once we got that information back, there was a lot of time kind of digging through it all. Then in the summer, the economic developers received individual, confidential, of course, reports on how they stack up, if you will, and how they're doing with the self-assessment. And it really helps them compare to their peers and understand national best practices. Outcomes still to come are going to be tools that economic developers can use to share information about the importance of economic development, the areas that they need to invest in, and the resources that they need to be successful. Steps and, of course, encouraging collaboration among local partners. Next step, please, or next slide, please. The report is going to basically, there are 2 deliverables, if you will. One is that confidential report that localities get to help them better understand themselves. And then there's going to be a toolkit that he is going to produce for economic development professionals, showcasing best practices and providing additional information. Next slide, please. And in the coming year, we're going to be engaging economic developers. VEDP is going to do virtual roadshows to help local and regional economic developers understand how to use the self-assessment report, engage them on target strategy areas. This is an initiative where we want to be, more supportive to our local and regional partners in trying to help understand economic competitiveness and build up their economic competitiveness. So you can see the timeline here, much of which I've already mentioned. I want to thank VACO for working with us throughout this. When we first started talking about this, I sat down with Dean and Katie, and we talked about how this could be helpful to localities. And I know you all have provided information to your membership that this survey was coming. And so we really appreciate that and look forward to working with you all as we roll this out and help our communities increase their competitiveness across Virginia. And so I think with that, I think that's the last slide, Joe. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today, talk a little bit about what we're working on. And thank you for all the work you all are doing. I know this has been a really, really tough year, and you all are wearing many hats and juggling things from, recovery and jobs to schools and education. And so thanks for the work that you're doing. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to continuing working with you all moving forward.
Do we have any questions?
I just wanted to say that I like the, this is Ruth, sorry, I like the idea of you coming and working with the localities. I think that's going to be really important. And I'm a little discouraged when I hear about hospitality, because for James City, we're an economy built on tourism. And so, we want to still see tourism, and we know we've got a long road back, but, it would be, while we've got some manufacturing, et cetera, we were really a economy built on tourism. So we need that to come back eventually.
Absolutely, Ruth. I couldn't agree more. I mean, tourism is a huge part of economic development. And I know, obviously, in James City, I live in Gloucester, so I know how big it is there. And I know you all have suffered. We do think, obviously, it's going to come back. Hospitality will eventually, but there are going to be some businesses that just haven't survived or won't survive through this period until we get there. And so trying to figure out how to help those workers in the meantime. Ruth, I'll tell you, we've been working closely with Vaughn at the partnership there. And I know she's doing a great job, and it's been really carrying the torch for the importance of tourism and how we help get these folks back to work.
Hi, Christy. This is Lud Kimbrough. Over in Deltaville, so you're familiar with our area, we've got over a dozen boatyards here that are as busy as they've ever been, and they're all starving for trade talent. And I get questions constantly of where can we find technicians with all the various skills, or at least basic understanding of basic trade skills. And it sounds like you may have some incentives or programs that I could connect you to them to help in training people who don't have the skills, or perhaps locating people who've been displaced from COVID and are looking for other work opportunities. Should I follow up with you on this, or?
Yeah, let's follow up afterwards. I should probably clarify that the two workforce development programs we have are all programs at VEDP are on a competitive basis. So there has to be a certain number of capital investment and jobs for a project, and it has to be competitive with another state to qualify for our programs. However, we have a very talented talent solutions team who know a lot about other workforce programs around Virginia that may not require that competitive nature. And what I'd like to do is connect you with Debbie Melvin on our team, who can help provide some information on some programs that might meet your specific needs.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else?
If there's not any other questions, I wanted to just give a shout out to VEDP and Christy, and thanks for being here today. Christy, one thing just maybe follow up on is we've had some recent meetings of a new committee we have on energy, a subcommittee, because it's become such a big issue. And Brendan knows that we've had a couple meetings recently, and I'm sure you may not be the in the know specifically, but with the supply chain for solar and wind and even potentially nuclear energy, with strategic plan getting ready to come out, how is Virginia positioned maybe to take advantage of that in creating businesses and jobs?
That is a great question, Joe, and I actually have been very interested in that.
Awesome.
happy to talk a little bit about it. So, offshore wind is, I think, as you all saw during this past session, has really, and nuclear, they're all part of the, Commonwealth's new energy focus, if you will, as passed by the General Assembly this year. And so we've been working on working closely, obviously, with the Hampton Roads Alliance and the communities down in Hampton Roads on the offshore wind piece. We see Virginia as really the leader in opportunity on offshore wind on the East Coast. I think the asset that we have in the port is just unmatched, if you will. I know the folks in the Northeast are very coordinated and are anxious to get involved in offshore wind and are doing their work as well. But we really think that our port gives us a leg up, if you will, because of where our port is and the design and the tunnels. And I don't claim to know all the ins and outs of that, but I can tell you that, these are huge turbines, and we're able in Virginia to move them straight up and down. And I don't think others can do that the way that we can. So all that to say, there's a lot of assets that we have that really position us well. We've been talking to companies, and there are some potential projects out there. I think wind is an exciting opportunity. I think that one thing I think is really cool that's happening in Hampton Roads regarding wind is they're not looking at this just as an opportunity for their region, and they're starting conversations with regions across the state to say, hey, if we're able to, land a big manufacturing project, what parts of the supply chain can be placed in other parts of the state? And so I think everyone's really trying to look at this as a win for all of Virginia and try to understand, what all those opportunities are, because there's a huge supply chain involved. And then I think, when you talk about nuclear, I know there's the legislature passed a bill directing multiple agencies to develop a strategic plan to be coming, I think, in the next month or so prior to session. So, I think Virginia, just sum up by saying, I think we're very well positioned for some of these opportunities, particularly offshore wind. I think we're a little further down the road, on some of these things on offshore wind. So, I think we have done, the General Assembly and the governor have done everything, they need to do to say, Virginia is open for this. Virginia wants this. And I think we're well positioned, and companies are seeing that.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Christy, how are you?
I'm good, Glenn. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. I'd like to commend the agency for its brilliant hiring practices. Of course,
We are really good at that.
Of course, I'm talking about you. But anyway,
Yeah.
but I have a legitimate question. Does the agency foresee any legislation coming as a result of the most recent JLARC report on incentives?
I don't know. Certainly not we would be asking for. I think that's certainly been a topic of conversation after the report. And, I hear rumors of people looking at that and talking about potential legislation, but I'm not aware of anything specific or what direction any of it may be going.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And we do love Emily. She does such an awesome. I see Jill's on here too.
She loves it.
Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, Christy, thank you so much. And it's so good to see you. And you may be hearing for some of us, but thank you for taking the time to be with us. Stay with us if you can, but I know you're busy because we have a little bit more business on our agenda.
Well, I will let you all get to your business. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Great to see you all this morning.
Good to see you. Take care.